This is the final part of the test. This is 6.3. This is multiplying polynomials. There will be more than 4 questions on the test, so that part's actually not quite true. First question is question 9 from the pre-test, which involves the picture with the tiles. So first of all, I see that there are, and I'm just counting them out here, 6 of the white squares, the big white squares, which I know are x squared, so 6x squared. And unfortunately, our answer also has that for all of them, so that didn't actually help us to eliminate anything. Now, as we look at the next term, though, I have 2 of the rectangles, the white rectangles, which are positive x, and I have 6 of the negative ones here. So what I'm doing here then is 2 take away 6, which is, and if you're not sure, just use your calculator, -4. And then think about -4 what? Well, these rectangles are x's, so this would be -4x. Of course, what I really did here was 2x take away 6x, and that's also why it's -4x. And that should be enough for us to pick the right answer here. Just notice at the end here, we have the 2 negative little squares, and you can see here that they're just negative numbers, and we have 2 of them, so that's why it's -2. Skipping to 12, this is the question where we have the grid, and we talked about earlier, make sure you're checking carefully, like is there a plus or a minus in the middle here? If there is nothing in between, that means it's multiplication, and that means this is the question where we're going to draw the grid to try and answer them. Now, actually, we're going to draw a grid for every single question within this section. So if you can remember the third section, that's where you do that. That'll be a good little mental reminder for you. So I write the question across the top, 2x minus 1. And then for the positive 3, I can just put 3. But certainly at the top here, you have to put -1 because it says subtract 1 there. And then we fill this grid in just like we filled in section 2 by multiplying. So x times 2x, numbers first, 2. And then x times by itself would be x squared. X times -1, numbers first, and then letters second. 3 times 2x, numbers first, 3 times 2, and then letters second. And at the bottom corner, 3 times -1 is -3. And as we're doing the question, at the end, don't forget we've got to look for like terms, and we've got to add these together. So as I look at my answer, starting in the top corner, 2x squared, get rid of an answer. 6 add -1 is 5, which would be +5, and then actually I already know my answer now. I can see from looking at the other answer choices that they don't have +5x in them, but notice in the bottom corner it does say -3, which does confirm that answer. Now, interestingly, if you'd only worked out, normally we start at the top, if you start at the bottom for this, 3 times -1 is -3, notice this is the only answer that actually ends in -3. So sometimes you can use that as a quick way of figuring out the correct answer as well. Excuse me. Question 13, same thing. I can see I'm multiplying, so I'm going to go ahead and draw my grid. 2a minus 3b, 2a plus 3b. So 2 times 2, numbers first, is 4, and a times by itself would be a squared. 2 times -3 is -6, and a times b, we just put them in alphabetical order. We can only combine them if they're the same letter. If they're different letters, we just do them in alphabetical order. 3 times 2 is 6, and b times a, just put them in alphabetical order. 3 times -3 is -9, and b times b is b squared. And don't forget to add these middle terms together as well. So starting in the top left, I can see it's 4a squared, so there's one answer gone. 6 add -6 is 0, so technically it's 0ab, but if it's 0, we don't actually put anything at all, so you could actually just cross those out. And then at the end here, we've got -9b squared, and you can see that it's the answer from there. And you could probably have got rid of this answer pretty quickly as well, as it says +9b squared, just by looking at that bottom corner as well. Squared. This was one that caused a lot of problems on 6.4, and then we got a little bit better after extra practice on 7.5. Much like one of the questions we saw earlier. Remember, squared means multiply by itself. So when we had that question on question 7 with the squared, s squared, we wrote out the side length, and then we multiplied it by the same side length. Same for this question. Squared means you just write it out 2 times, and then now we can draw a grid to answer this question as well. So let me fill in the grid. 7y and 2, 7y and 2. 7 times 7 is 49, and y times by itself would give me y squared, and I'm already eliminating answers as I go through. 7 times 2 is 14, and there's a y in the question. 2 times 7 is also 14, and there's a y here as well. And 2 times 2 is 4. And then as we add these terms together in the middle, start at the top, 49y squared. 14 add 14 is 28, and the 4 is clearly a positive 4, which means it would be this answer here. So certainly keep an eye out for that question. Multiplication again, a slightly bigger question this time though. 2 terms times by 3 terms. So most questions will be the 2 by 2, like you see in 12, 13, and 14. But you should expect one question where you have a slightly bigger question. So this one is a 2 by 3. So a and 2. 5a squared, negative 3a and 1. And then I can start to fill this in as well. Now you might want to do the same trick that I did on one of the earlier questions, is if you start at the bottom corner here, 1 times 2, that's obviously the easiest one to do, is 2. Notice these answers don't even end in 2, they end in 3. So you can already make this a 50-50 just by doing basic multiplication on this question. Alright, let's do this properly though. So numbers first, 5. A squared times a, you can add the exponents, 2 add 1 gives me 3. 5 times 2 is 10. As it says a squared, put a squared. Numbers first, negative 3. A times by itself is a squared. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. As there's an a, let's put in an a. And 1 times a, you could just put a. I'm going to write 1a, but it's the same thing. Look for those like terms on the diagonals. So we want to combine a squareds with a squareds and a's with a's. Starting in the top corner, you could see that it was 5a cubed. Negative 3, and that negative sign is really important here. Negative 3 add 10 is positive 7, and that should give us the answer. Now, if we miss the negative sign and did 3 add 10, you might pick 13 actually as the wrong answer. So those negative signs are important, so make sure you make them big enough that you can see. 1 add negative 6 is negative 5. And then the 2 in the bottom corner will tell you that that is going to be your correct answer. Question 16. This is one of the longer questions on the test. This is going to be a 3-point question. So you're going to find the areas of rectangles, and it says find the difference of them. So basically, we're going to find the area. Whoops. Let me just get rid of that there. I've got a number blocked in. We're going to find the area of shape A. We're going to find the area of shape B. And then difference means we're going to subtract those 2 answers. So let me draw a grid for this. And I'm going to do A first. So 3m and 2. And 6m and negative 1. So numbers first, 3 times 6 is 18. M times by itself is m squared. 6 times 2 is 12. And as there's an m, put an m there as well. Negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. As there's an m, put an m there. And negative 1 times 2 is negative 2. Don't forget the loop, because we want to combine these terms. So that's going to give me 18m squared. Negative 3 add 12 is 9, so plus 9m. And then negative 2 on the end of the question. So that would be 1 point for finding the area of shape A. And then we're going to do the same for shape B. So let me draw another grid. 2m and 7, 3m and negative 1, and let's fill it in the same. 3 times 2 is 6, m times m is m squared. 3 times 7 is 21, and there's an m. Negative 1 times 2 is negative 2 with an m. Negative 1 times 7 is negative 7. And then we can loop these 2 together as well. Don't miss that negative sign down there, though, on the negative 2. So this time I would have 6m squared. Negative 2 add 21 is 19. And then we got negative 7 at the end there. So that would be your second point for finding the area of shape B. Find the area of the difference. So difference means we're going to subtract. So 18m squared take away 6m squared. 18 take away 6 is 12, and therefore I know that's the correct answer now. 9 take away 19 is -10, and -2 take away -7 is 5. So that just confirms that's the answer. Now, if you were doing this just as a 1-point question on the SOL, what you might just choose to do is just work out this very first box here, and then work out the very first box here, and not work out the rest of the question. Because from here, you can actually figure out what the correct answer is as well. 6 times 3, 18, m times m, m squared. 3 times 2 is 6, m times m is m squared. And then as you do the difference there, 18 take away 6 would also give you 12, and that would enable you to get the right answer. The only reason I could do that is I noticed in the question that all the number of m squareds were different. So once I knew that number, I could obviously pick out the correct answer. And that's a good way of being able to answer that question as well. But that will probably be the most difficult question on the test in terms of there's a lot of things that we have to do for that question. That concludes the video for 6.3. If you want specific help on this and extra questions, you could go back and watch the video for 6.4 and lesson 6.4, sorry, and lesson 6.5, and there would be additional examples for both of these types of questions for you to look at.